So the astrology of the week of 27 December 2021 to 2 January 2022, you heard we get the new year there, is really a week of new beginnings. This is a week of a lot of fresh start energy, which I think comes at a perfect time for, everything that we're going through astrologically. But this new beginning week, we've got New Year's celebration. So the calendar turns. We have Jupiter entering Pisces for good. Jupiter will never come back into Aquarius until about 12 years or 10, 11 years from now. And then we have a new moon in Capricorn. So we get the seeding of the new lunation, the new moon syzygy. Fresh start, get ready. So let's look into the charts. Let's look into the astrology this week. I'm S.J. Anderson, and I'm very, very happy to be here. So happy to be celebrating a new year, and a new year with you out there, and a new year here on my channel, and a new year of astrology. Again, the theme is this newness, this fresh start that we have so heavily seen in the symbolic nature of this week. And I think about calendrics and how the calendars themselves can be astrological. But before I dive into that, I just want to say this is my channel. I am S.J. Anderson. Welcome here. I do astrology every week, a video called Weekly Astrology. I will dive into the planetary aspects, the sign changes, and the stations that the planets make, the stations retrograde or direct. I will secondly look at the moon, the sign changes that the moon makes, the configurations of the moon. Third, I'm going to pick two charts. We're going to go deep into two charts. These are charts that will show us and reflect the energy of the astrology. And finally, I'll throw a cartomancy card, a tarot card, and we'll understand maybe an additional symbol for the week. That's what I do here. And again, welcome here. It's always wonderful to be going into astrology. I mean, that's what I am impassioned by and enthused by, and that might even be an euphemism. I mean, it's kind of my lifeblood in a way. And so every week I get to do it, just my great honor and privilege. Back to this theme I wanted to talk about at the outset is the calendar, calendrics. The way that we mark time is itself astrological, because every year on 1 January, the sun is in that same degree, spends time in the same degree. It's not exactly the same. Sometimes the sun is a little bit earlier or a little bit later, but effectively the dates that we mark with our calendar can be matched to the solar cycles. And that's in the Western calendar systems. I guess it's the, Julian or so the Gregorian calendar. I always forget which one is which. So I'm not going to even try. I could look it up. But, this tradition of Western calendrics is marked to the sun. And then we have the solar lunar calendars of many other parts of the world. So when I was in China, we would celebrate the new year at a completely separate time. And that's based on the sun and the moon in combination. But it's still astrological. Calendrics is astrological. And I was thinking about an analogy. I mean, I can look at my watch and see these movements around a circle, right? The hands of the watch point to these points on a circle. That's how you can think about the planets. It's actually a sky clock where each of these points is actually then projected back onto the ecliptic. That's like the hands of the clock pointing to this flat plane on the face of the watch. And then we can map, it's like a clock with 7 hands. In a way, or more if you're going to throw in modern outer planets or even other dwarf planets or the nodes. I mean, you can start getting like pretty quickly up to upwards of 15 hands on this sky clock. But you can think about astrology as a kind of timing device that's calendrical, that's probably not a word, but it's based on the calendars. And that's what's so big about this week. It's a fresh beginning. It's like a multiple fronts. We get this fresh start. So we get a syzygy, a new moon this week. That's the seeding that happens every 28 days of the moon. You can think about the moon as maybe the second hands getting seeded by the sun. And I was talking about this week. It's so amazing, the elegance of the reality we're in, where the sun and the moon are perfectly aligned by the distance from the earth and then their size, that when we have eclipses, they can cover each other up perfectly. Isn't that mind-blowing? I mean, to me, it's like, are we in something that's maybe more like a simulation or a computer program? There's certainly evidence for elegant design and for almost mathematical precision for this sky clock. And I go back to Ptolemy and Timaeus, where he talks about, you know, God created the planets when he made time itself as a kind of timing vehicle. That's my paraphrase. But there's this idea going all the way back. And so I think that there is a kind of intelligent design potentially, or a, you know, a mystery to the elegance of the reality. We get, it's not eclipse season this week, but it's just an example. So that seeding though of this syzygy in Capricorn, first syzygy with Jupiter now in Pisces, that also happens this week. And that's the other big story of this week, the fresh start we all get with the Jupiter-Saturn co-present cycle. It's been 2 long years. Pat yourself on the back, you know, congratulate yourself, hug your family, kiss your loved ones. We are out of this Jupiter-Saturn being together moment, which creates upheaval. All of astrologers for thousands, multiple, you know, hundreds of years, 1,000 or more years have described Jupiter and Saturn come together, reality gets turned on its head. That's over now. And Jupiter and Saturn themselves can be thought of as a syzygy cycle, because in a way, you know, it's a lunation. So like the lunation of the moon and the sun, the lunar month, the lunation cycle, each planet also has a synodic cycle with other planets. So it's the Jupiter-Saturn synodic cycle, I think would be the definition there. You see that that's now seated in like a new moon phase, and then it's 20 years. We'll have the opposition, I believe, sometime in like 2030, Jupiter-Saturn will be in opposition, and then they'll have the waning square, and then we get the new seed. So in that sense, it's like the opening young Jupiter, you might say. Like when we talk about the young visible moon, that little sliver in the sky after the moon gets reborn, we're entering a young Jupiter phase. And I just love it that this is happening, because now we get to cope with and integrate these upheavals. I'm going to go all into that later. And then the final sense of newness is, yeah, we just get this calendar change. This 1 becomes 2, 2021 becomes 2022, and that's a fresh start. And that's why non-astrological mindsets talk about seeding newness when those calendars shift, because you get that representative numeral change. But we're having that on multiple fronts this week. And so just get excited about what you want to do in your life, what you can send your energy into in terms of a fresh start or behaving in a fresh way. And that's the big, big theme of this week. Of course, Saturn is strong in Aquarius. This syzygy's in Capricorn. So there's a Saturnine vibe of restriction with how this new energy will express. But that can be beautiful, you know, giving someone one piece of paper or one roll of film and say, go make some art. You only have that 26 actuations or whatever it is on one little film camera. You're going to be careful, you know. So that Saturn kind of protective feature that Saturn can bring as we're starting things anew this week can be the good side of Saturn. Saturn's strong in Aquarius. We can't bash it. I've been, I think, a little hard on Saturn, you know, Saturn in Aquarius. Oh, poor Saturn. It's done so much damage. Well, at the same time, there's these opportunities, these restricted opportunities to really grow with a restricted domain of starting points, or of a kind of a restricted notions, or kind of a restricted rule set. And we see that in the world this week with flights were canceled. I just saw this news that happened this week. So anyhow, that's a little bit of the background, the introduction, the energetic tone of everything that's going down. It's a big, big week of shifts, and I'm very excited we made it. Let's dive into the astrology. Let's look at the things that are happening this week. A lot of stuff going on here if you just check it out. I mean, by the time we hit Wednesday is when Jupiter comes into Pisces, 5 a.m. in Central Europe. It'll be late in Tuesday evening there in North America, later in the day down under or in Asia. And this is the big celebration, you know, and I'm going to be celebrating it on Twitter. I can't wait to tweet all about Pisces and go in depth about some of the you know, real searching kind of examinations of what is Piscean. What does it mean to embrace the Pisces energy? The reason why it's time for that is because Jupiter is the ancient ruler of Pisces. So you can think about this as the main energy of the sign. The planet comes home and gets to clean up its home. If you're out traveling and you come back to your main homestead, you may fix it or clean it up as you move into it. You know, it's what we do when we get ready to live in a house. We make sure it's clean and in order. So that's what Jupiter will get to do. This week it starts. Again, we had 3 months of this in 2021, the little preview, only in those first 3 degrees though, and Jupiter was quite slow. It's basically entered and slowed down and then went backwards. Now it's back after those preparatory 3 months to really do the work that it wants to do. So, you know, maybe it's less of a shock, this energy, or less of a difference, because we've already had a little bit of a preview. And you might think about that. How was May, June, July for you in your Pisces sector in terms of healing, health, wisdom, you know, all of the integration that Pisces can represent? You might consider that now and see what tables were set and be prepared to kind of move further with those things that were opened. But that happens Wednesday, 5 a.m. And then that same day, we have here, so here we go. I'm just going to read a little bit more. Jupiter returns to Pisces for good. Healing waters has been my favorite metaphor. Pisces is a water sign. It's a mutable water sign, so it's how water can change. And I always think about bathing, cleaning out of a period of restriction. You know, a long journey. You can see in cinema, people are traveling or they fight and they go through this long journey and they're dirty and their clothes are ripped. And then they, you know, here's the shower, go take a bath, go clean and cleanse. Sometimes that being tired and worn and weary from a long journey can be maybe Jupiter in Saturn ruled signs, Aquarius and Capricorn, but that's over now, and now Jupiter gets to enter these baths, the bathhouse, and settle into these healing waters. So it's not instant repair, it's not instant cleanliness. There's a process with those waters that change from the state of being worn to the state of being refreshed. And that's what Pisces is. It's the changeable nature of water. And so look for more a transition phase of cleaning up, and that might mean you see the damage, right? This is the integration period of Jupiter in Pisces for these 5 months of 2022. Seeing where we've maybe been damaged, seeing it anew for the first time. I've always thought that 2020 and 2021 have been shock transits and shock energy, and we know shock is the first phase of a grief process or a process of healing. There's a state of shock and you don't really have an awareness of what's happened. This is the awareness transit, where you can bring healing waters and healing awareness as you transition into the 2020s. This is like a transition 5 months with Jupiter here, and then at the end of 2022 to bring awareness to just what it is that we have entered into. So use it to heal, use it to heal. And this is a great week as we get the 2022, and then we get the Syzygy new moon to think about this beginnings and the healings of beginnings. So that happens this week. Also on Wednesday, 11:30 Central Europe, we've got the Mercury-Venus conjunction. It's a nice creative kiss as these planets meet here in what I have as workhorse Capricorn. You know, Capricorn gets this reputation of being a workhorse. I think it's accurate in the way that Mars is exalted in Capricorn, Saturn rules Capricorn. Those are two planets of kind of toughness. And certainly Saturn can apply longevity, staying with things over time. With Mars, you're actually putting in the force of power. So I don't really have a problem with that side of looking at Capricorn as maybe a working, industrious sign. But you have Mercury and Venus meeting there this week. Venus retrograde, Mercury now direct. And I think it's a lovely time to think about creative action, even looking at old creative projects and bringing some of the fresh mercurial meticulousness or revampment into maybe something you've been working on or something that's been in a drawer for a few months, especially in a time when maybe people have some time off from work. You can kind of resurrect something or edit some paragraphs from your writing project or whatever it is. It feels like there's a return to something here with the Venus retrograde. But setting aside that, Venus and Mercury coming together are always creative combinations, can often be such. Film editing, the beauty of film, but the meticulous need to edit a film. That's Mercury-Venus combinations. You know, even painting there's a mercurial side of knowing what paints to mix and what goes good with what, you know, knowing your tools. That's very much a mercurial theme. So look for some creative projects also on Wednesday, maybe with Jupiter and Pisces that will refresh something and some kind of creative spirit for you. If we move then to Thursday, early in the morning, we get this Mars Saturn sextile, Mars from Sagittarius, Saturn and Aquarius. Not going to say too much about that aspect, though I do think it's supportive with respect to operating within restriction. If you're having to stay home this week, or if you're not able to go out, or if you're staying home, feel like you're needing to stay home, this might be a good time to kind of act within those restrictions. Maybe there's things around the places that you feel safe or that you're going to be where you can do some movement. let these restrictions be supportive. That's what a sextile aspect is, in a way that you can build things in spite of maybe what appears to be a limited moment with this, with Saturn being heavy and with flights being canceled. I don't know if that impacted you or not. But it's a metaphor here. If it didn't, you know, the flight gets canceled, what do you do if your plans get canceled? Well, maybe there's openings up that allow you to refocus with this Saturn Mars sextile. Then we've got Mercury coming to Aquarius on Sunday, hours before, about, what is that? About 12 hours or more before the syzygy, which is Sunday night. But Mercury in Aquarius is very interesting because it's going to be in that degree of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. This is now Mercury coming back to hit that degree, and Mercury is setting up for a retrograde. It stations retrograde in the middle of January, so now we're in this period where the Mercury retrograde story has begun. I think because of Aquarius, this is certainly about maybe additional restriction, but again, it's about what have you been building with these upheavals. Jupiter is now, again, young Jupiter in a 20-year cycle. What did this last 2 years, it made your life maybe exploded in some ways, or maybe that's too strong of a term, but new things probably happened to you and you've had to adapt. This young Jupiter is now all the opportunities to settle into this kind of new you, or this new phase. With Mercury being retrograde here in January and February, it's a time to maybe go back over, and we'll have a chance to even review intellectually, or some of the newness. You know, I think Mercury retrogrades are opportunities. All retrogrades are really an opportunity to pause, dig deeper, and settle back into things we've already looked at. Maybe editing is a perfect retrograde activity, because that's what you write the words and then you have to edit the sentences. It's going back over. It's like, oh, I don't want to edit this. Oh no, I missed this. Oh, this word, and you go look up words. What does this mean? Double check your syntax and your word uses and all of those things. So that's just a metaphor. We're kind of getting started with that, with Mercury entering these degrees where it will be will go back over in its retrograde later in the month. So then I've got here, yeah, the syzygy, which we'll launch into, but it's in Capricorn. It's a fresh start with this Saturnine period, working with the energies of Saturn for your benefit. And we're going to have very Saturn heavy skies. There's 10 days in February where we have all planets, and then the moon will come in too, but for like 4 or 5 days, it's the moon there as well, where we have 6 planets except for Jupiter in Saturn-ruled signs, in Capricorn and Aquarius. So it's a lot of Saturn coming up here in January and February, and be prepared for that. The necessities that Saturn produces, you know, it's like being tied down. You can't move, but you have to work within those constraints. We're in that now, but it's only going to intensify. And yeah, certainly this could mean, from a mundane astrological perspective, more shutdowns, more kind of restriction of what you're able to do. I'd get ready working from home, working in a closer circle around you. You might be forced into that. So, okay, those are the planetary aspects. Big week, a lot happening. Let's move now. Let's see what the moon is doing. What is the moon doing? Well, I love this Libra moon that we're starting out this week with. It's got an amazing feature in that it aspects both Venus and Jupiter from Libra. The last time the Libra moon will have the aspects to Jupiter, because Jupiter is moving into Pisces. And so this first 5 months, Libra moons are reversed to Jupiter while Jupiter is in Pisces. So, you know, this is kind of a final opportunity with this moon to think about your Jupiter and Aquarius story. How did Jupiter assist or expand or modify the Saturn there? You know, the Aquarius sectors of all of our charts were dynamically activated for upheaval. And, you know, you might think about that as this is the final moon with that aspect of Jupiter settling in and working with, you know, the gratitude that Jupiter can often impel. You know, thank you for adding these benefits to this area of my life, might be a way to just frame or think about this exploration. And it's an auspicious opportunity for Venus retrograde work, because Venus rules Libra. Venus is now retrograde. Venus is now separating from Pluto. And so we're getting maybe less intense with some of the Plutonic, you know, depth, which can be so destabilizing, and maybe we can settle more into more of a stable Venus retrograde moment as Venus is heading to the Sun. Next week, the Venus and the Sun will meet with that Venus next week or the week after. I think it may be next week, but shortly Venus and the Sun will meet, and Venus is purified in the heart of the Sun. We're heading to that, and we're moving away from Pluto with Venus's movement, and the moon is ruled by that moving parts Venus. Venus in Capricorn, Venus retrograde in Capricorn, settling into review with relationships, spending time with people that you've had old or long-standing relationships with can be highly supported this week as you kind of do life with people you've done life with before. That might be a good way to frame it. We kind of have teammates or people we're riding with in this incarnation, you know, soulmates. And I don't mean that in like a Pollyanna way. I mean like the people that we just are around. Soulmates can be all kinds of people, not just romance. We're kind of riding with soulmates here. This might be a way to think about this particular transit activated with the Libra moon. So it's quite a lot of support here. You know, then we've got, let's see here. Where do we have it? The Scorpio moon comes next. That is on Wednesday, right in the evening, or sorry, this is Tuesday, right in the evening. 10:16 Central European time, Tuesday evening. The moon falls into Scorpio. This is a rough moon. These fixed moons have been rough. The thing about this Scorpio moon is, yes, it is square Saturn. Yes, the moon is in its sign of fall. Yes, Mars in Sagittarius is averse to the moon, so maybe there isn't a communication with ruler Mars for support. But we do get Jupiter in Pisces with that sign-based trine. And I think that can maybe allow us to get through these Scorpio moons over the next 5 months a little bit easier than they otherwise would have been gotten through had Jupiter not been in Pisces and Jupiter had been under Saturn's reign. Jupiter is now free to do things fully. And I'll just say this here, with Jupiter in Pisces and Saturn in Sagittarius, actually I'm going to wait on that, but they're averse to each other, Jupiter and Saturn. So they can kind of do two things powerfully. Whereas when Saturn was in Aquarius, Jupiter had to basically be Saturn's servant. And so it's nice to have this trine from Jupiter as opposed to that square from Jupiter when Jupiter was in Aquarius now. I think these Scorpio moons get a little bit more of a healing tone. The depths and difficulties of a Scorpio moon might be able to be seen anew and used for healing, the stuff that these moons can trigger. That Scorpio moon lasts until Friday, early in the morning in Central Europe, 08 a.m., so 12:08 a.m. And that's Friday. You'll have this Scorpio moon, first Scorpio moon with Jupiter in Pisces. I think this will be a wonderful celebration, actually, of the Jupiter in Pisces moment. Remember, we've got Jupiter enters Pisces during the Scorpio moon, and then the moon comes into Sag, ruled by that Jupiter. So I think this Friday could be party, and Saturday you could celebrate Jupiter, actually, celebrate Jupiter in Pisces. And it's interesting, you know, Mars will be co-present with the moon, so there's an edge there, but there may be, I mean, I wouldn't say formal magical elections or anything, but maybe during a Jupiter hour on Jupiter's, not Jupiter's day, but you'll have Jupiter hours every day. There's 2 Jupiter hours, but you can maybe think, you know, Jupiter in Pisces, welcome to Pisces or something. That might be a way to go. Remember, this is hitting 2 parts of our chart. We've got Jupiter in Pisces and then Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter. Those 2 parts of our chart are very much activated for goodness. Really all of 2022 and into 2023 as Jupiter gets very powerful, both in Pisces and Aries. I was saying on Twitter, this is a year of Jupiter 2022 because Jupiter has dignity all year. First in its domicile, its water domicile, and then by night triplicity in Aries. Very good year for Jupiter, and so these Jupiter sectors are very, very nice. I love that we get to celebrate New Year's with a Jupiter moon ruled by Jupiter in Pisces. It's very much the sense of the freshness and the healing and the forward-looking nature that Jupiter can often imply, the hope that Jupiter signifies. So let's go here. Then we have here, I said here the Mars is as co-present with this moon, and it's maybe dislodging some of these restful vibes with Mars there in Sagittarius, maybe wanting us to get overly excited, could be a way that this goes, or just agitated in a good way, anxious for the newness. You know, this Mars can sometimes, with double fire, Mars is fire on its own, Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. There's going to just be a lot of activity. I've certainly felt it. I always underestimate the power of Mars in a mutable sign, particularly Gemini or Sagittarius, the day-sect mutable signs. It just triggers tons of activity, and I've been super busy. You know, I've been trying to take time off. It's just way busy, way busier than I'd ever imagined. So much to do, so much things have come up that I've had to attend to. It kind of feels a little out of control, to be honest. And that's a Mars in Sagittarius. Mars in a fiery, expansive, mutable fire sign is going to do that. This moon has some of that. So I think New Year's, there might be a lot of activity, even if you're constrained, you know, maybe you don't go to the big city celebration, but there's just a lot of other activity happening. Would not at all surprise me if you experience that. Then we get the Capricorn moon to close the week. The moon enters Capricorn Sunday morning at 12:02 a.m. And I have here, it forces a confrontation with Saturn's coolness and Saturn's separation. But there's opportunities to settle and to make homey what might otherwise be uncomfortable. How can we get comfortable within the discomfort? And I love this moon. Jupiter's in Pisces. I'm going to go into this new moon chart in detail, but there's a lot of good things to like about this new moon, syzygy. It's got some cool stuff in it. All right, let's go here. Let's go. That's a lot already, I know, but it's a big week. Let's try to move fast. Charts of the week. First is my transit of the week. The Libra moon in the late degrees here. I've got Tuesday, 6:48 p.m. in Central Europe. We have the Libra moon in the late degrees. It separates from Venus and it applies to Jupiter. Astrologers call that a bonification by transit. We always look at what planets the moon separates from and what planets the moon applies to, because the moon carries light. It transfers light of the planets that it makes aspects to. Ancient concept. And we like to have the moon bathing or saturated with benefic energy, Venus or Jupiter. And in this case, we get it, this Libra moon, this waning Libra moon. In this chart, I like it because the moon is in the terms of Jupiter. And remember, Venus is still, has dignity in Capricorn. It's the day triplicity ruler. So this chart I'm looking at where I am is night, but you may be able to get half the time it's daytime, or less than half the time actually, because it's Capricorn, but you know, a big chunk of each 24-hour period has some daylight. You know, you can get Venus dignified there. But you've got here, look at this, it's separating from Venus, applying to Jupiter. It's this square and this sextile. And it's the last Libra moon trine Jupiter in Aquarius, like I had already mentioned. That's a very optimistic thing and a very auspicious thing. Settling in our Jupiter and Aquarius story with this final kind of closing moment. Sometimes with waning moons, there's a sense of not only a look back, but it's the kind of journaling we do after, the post-game report. The way that we can say, all right, that went well. I want to, you know, acknowledge this was a beneficial side. This is maybe something I'd like to let go of. So often reviews can be about letting go of what didn't work, but you have to see it. You have to be aware of it. And when you have a lunar activation like this, making that aspect, that trine to Jupiter and Aquarius, it can be nice for awareness, the kind of hopeful, healing awareness. The waning moon, we want to let go of things. Maybe you'll see also your Venus retrograde story now in focus, like I had mentioned earlier. And I talked a lot about this already, that Venus is now separating from Pluto, applying to Mercury in this chart. Mercury is always great for thinking about things, analyzing things. And because the ruler of the moon, Venus, is very close to Mercury, there can be a sense of this kind of look back as maybe just what I had said earlier. I think that's a great way to go here. Like, how did my Jupiter and Aquarius story go? Just like I was saying a few minutes ago, Mercury here can be useful for that, the analysis of that. And remember, it's setting up 2022. So often when we do like a New Year's resolution, you don't know, what do you want to change? That's the question. Well, you don't know unless you look back and say, well, what's not working? You know, and so this is the kind of thing we can do. What hasn't been working with Jupiter and Aquarius? What needs to be tweaked? Use this Mercury, close conjunction with Mercury and Venus, and the moon being in between Venus and in between Jupiter, to kind of mix these look backs with hopeful look forwards. That's how I would use this moon. Look, it's not a perfect moon. You know, you have the ruler retrograde. That's always not the best way to go, and it's, you know, in these late degrees here, but it's still pretty darn good. And of the moons this week, I like it the best because it's got, for a lot of reasons, I mean, like I already spoke about, the moon in fall in Scorpio, the moon with Mars in Sagittarius, and the moon in exile in Capricorn. This is the best opportunity, and I love that it's this last bonification of the Libra moon. The other thing I'll say, and this is where we can shift to the lunarium.co.uk article on the 17th lunar mansion. That's where the moon will be during much of this bonification. See, it's good for financial security, friendship, love and marriage, building, promotion, healing, and cutting hair. Not good for traveling or risky commercial operations, but its essence, prevented loss or friendship. This is the side of Libra that I think is important to interject here. Remember, Libra is ruled by Saturn and Mercury, by triplicity. Saturn is exalted in Libra. Libra is a serious energy. This is not a fluffy Venusian, let's just go look at some art at the museum and kind of fuck off for the day. Pardon that. I rarely, very, very rarely use a 4-letter word, and I'm going to try to roll that back, but just, I guess I let loose here a little bit. I'm excited about the holiday season. Fluff off is maybe the best term. You know, fluffing off and just this kind of lighthearted side of Venus. Well, no, Venus has a very serious side that comes through Libra here. Saturn and Mercury, these can be very strategic planets and planets of thinking and analyzing in a serious way. You know, you think about Saturn and Venus combinations are like knowledge that can have power and weight and can change the world. You combine that with Venus and the kind of interpersonal operations of Venus, and you get like strategic diplomacy or ways of manipulation. That's probably a negative tone, but influence might be a better, how to influence people. These are serious things. And you think about friendship, like who are your friends? Who can help you gain security, right? Other people in your life that are teaching you things about how to set up and plan for things that have longevity. That's a Libran side of things. Marriage itself is a Saturnine legal agreement. So it's not just the kind of erotic side of Venus. You capture that and bottle it in Saturn and Mercury, right? Legal agreements. So, you know, I think that's what I would be thinking here. It's more of a serious side of Venus and of Jupiter, of like, not these lighthearted, you know, contemplations. Again, like who's riding with you? Who are your ride or dies? I think would be the way to say it. Who's committed to you, and how can you kind of move into 2022 with like a clean crew? You know, my crew, my boys, my gals, my folks, your crew, who's with you and riding with you. Maybe you prune that a little bit. They say that we're a combination of the 4 or 5 people that we spend the most time with. Maybe it's time to look at that list. You know, who are you spending time with? Who maybe can you spend more time with that you can learn from, or it's someone you want to be like? That might be just the best way to frame it. Who has what you want? You know, whether that's of any kind of quality. Maybe they're someone that's a hard worker, that has a skill, or that you can learn. That's the great thing about social media, by the way, and these are air signs, is you can tailor your experience and just like interact with people who are doing the things you want to do, writing and thinking about the things you want to do. We have that with astrology, like on Twitter, for example. There's whole communities where you can really learn so much. And this is on Twitter is great because it's almost every topic. There's whole communities of people that you can engage with and learn from. So maybe that's part of this. It's like pruning those networks, or maybe starting an account and going into new networks that you like. So, or that you want to be a part of. So that's how I think about this Libra moon. Great opportunity, kind of the closing cycle of this final moment of Jupiter in Aquarius. I'm really happy. Let's go down to the new moon. I'm happy about it. Let's go down to the new moon. Here is this chart. It's on Sunday. It's right at the end of the week, 7:30 in Central Europe. This new moon is very potent. Again, we're after the calendar has turned, we're after Jupiter has entered Pisces, and now we get this fresh new moon coming on the 2nd day of the new year. And what, 5 days after Jupiter has been into Pisces, 4 or 5 days of Jupiter in Pisces. The thing about this syzygy, Saturn and Jupiter are both powerful, okay? They're both in the sign they rule. Saturn is in Aquarius and Jupiter is in Pisces, and they both rule the eclipse. Look at this. By Egyptian term, not the eclipse, the syzygy, the new moon. By Egyptian term, Jupiter rules the new moon, and Jupiter makes the sextile to this new moon. So you have a supportive sign-based sextile from ruler Jupiter, the Egyptian term ruler Jupiter. Wonderful, you love that, you love seeing that. And this is why I open this talk with like this opportunity for newness. The syzygy is ruled by this brand new ingress of the greater benefic in this supportive aspect of the sextile. So it's like, it's not just newness that doesn't have astrological support here. This is a fresh start, the kind of fresh start you want, where you have support from some benefic planets, and it's co-present with Venus, sextile Jupiter. So both benefics are highly active, and both malefic planets, look at this, are averse to this syzygy. So this is a special syzygy. I think, to start 2022 with. It's a very hopeful and optimistic syzygy and new moon, where I do think a lot of fresh starts can be had here, and you can really get the ground running with the changes you want to make in 2022. Super, super supportive here. Averse to the lunar nodes, averse to Saturn and to Mars, all the things that we want any planet that we're really working with to have aversions to. We get it in this chart. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful opportunity. What do I have here? Upheaval and now integration. Jupiter sextile from Pisces support. So truth. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the talk. Jupiter in Pisces is not just this lighthearted energy. It's actually really tough and serious and heavy duty energy, because you're cleaning the wounds and seeing through awareness the difficulties. I think about this as after the shock phase. This happened to me, I'll tell you. I had a bicycle accident, 2009. And I don't remember the accident. All I remember is driving, and then I woke up and the sirens woke me up and people were around me. Got very lucky. It was a heavy traffic in Portland, Oregon, and I woke up on the grass, and then the ambulance workers put me in the ambulance. And I remember finally I was in the ambulance, and I just came to finally with the awareness of where I was. And I just broke down and started bawling because I was just so scared and shocked. And this is the Pisces transit. It's the tears of finally seeing just what it is we're faced with. And I think about the 20-year cycle of what's been initiated in the upheaval, where we can cry now. I said with some astrologer friends I spoke with a couple of weeks ago, this is the grief transit of Jupiter and Pisces. And I think we're gonna have a great winter and early spring of grief. And grief means we can see and feel. And I think this is gonna be a time to really see and feel just where we are collectively and interpersonally, and cry and weep. You know, crying is such a healing thing. There's so many times in my life where I've just broken down in uncontrollable tears, and it was just what I needed. My soul needed that to like let out these deep wounds that I had, you know. And so I think there's a very much symbolic sense that with Pisces being so dynamically activated, big syzygies, 2 of them in this spring here, late winter and spring, where we're going to be grieving and grieving. If you're doing some grieving out there, I'm with you in spirit, and you know, there's gods and angelic energies that can kind of envelop you and hold you while you go through some of the releases you may need to go through. But it's so optimistic and it's so auspicious to be going through that. Let me see here. So see things for healing. We might have the awareness for things that need healing. And this is just what I said here. Pisces is not the easy riding vibe. It's actually the sea maybe getting sloshed about. It's mutable water. I was just reading some Dan Ruddier, and he's like, listen, Pisces is when Saturn tries to construct this newness. We get Capricorn, then Aquarius. By the time you get to Pisces, it's kind of this chaotic sloshing of the seas, where everything gets washed away that doesn't have that deep rootedness of utility and longevity. It's kind of the cleanup transit with Pisces. And now we have Jupiter and Pisces kind of cleaning up here. A lot of this, what Saturn maybe got wrong with Jupiter, now Pisces comes in to clean up. So just use this syzygy, and you know, I think this is the one where you can do some of these new moon rituals. I mean, light your candles. Seeing this, I don't have plans to do this, but I want to just sit with like a candle and meditate during this one. This feels like a really good one to do that. And that's not even how I use astrological magic with this more modern new moon, full moon rituals, but I understand that type of work, and I would very much say, go for it with this one. Okay, next I want to just say that there is a fixed star, Nunki, very close to this moon and sun during the syzygy. Nunki is right there where the hand of Sagittarius is holding the arrow and the bow, and then it's right there near that hand. And you think about it, it fits with these themes of fresh start and going into 2022 with like eyes for new beginnings. Because when you have a bow and you hold it and you're using the bow in both hands as part of the release of something that is going to then, whether you're hunting, whether you're trying to, I don't know, even just gaming, like try to score a point by getting into a target close. The goal is to hit something with the arrow, and you're using the effort and the energy and the focus now before it's released. And so it feels very much like, as we turn this calendar 2022, And as we get the first syzygy with Jupiter and Pisces, as we get Jupiter and Pisces for good this week, it's almost like get ready, hold your bow, do your New Year's resolutions, and get ready to release, because this movement of the arrow would be like all of 2022 in this case. So it's a great time this week to settle in and think about that focus. I want to just point out here, Robson notes that Ptolemy gives this of the nature of Jupiter and Mercury, Nuntke, the star Nuntke. This other writer, Dr. Eric Morse, from his book, The Living Stars, he talks about this, this star Nuntke being related to topics of business, foreign affairs, religion. I just think it's like the importance of these kind of high-level goal visions that business can be so often about. He says it's like Sagittarius and Capricorn, Jupiter and Saturn, right? And that's what the syzygy is ruled by. In Capricorn, ruled by Saturn and Aquarius. In the Egyptian terms of Jupiter and Pisces strong. So there's kind of this high-level contemplation that I think this syzygy is perfect for, is like this initiation of newness, and it fits perfectly with the end of the Jupiter-Saturn co-present cycle. So get your bow ready, get aimed this week with some thinking in that way. And what I have here, Jupiter and Mercury can imply steady aim, holding the arrow, stay the course, but know the course. When Jupiter and Mercury work well together, it's like you know the details, but you have the long-term vision, and those, you know, elide or mesh or, you know, are copacetic with each other. So there's this kind of real opportunity, I think, this week with all of the lovely astrology going down. I love this week of astrology. I think it's really excellent for some really sweet astrology and some sweet times. Even though we got Venus retrograde, we can use this kind of look back with all this optimism. You know, the past can help the future. That's kind of a big theme this week of this newness. We don't know what needs to be new unless we go backward. All right, let's get a tarot card. That is the weekly astrology. Let's pull a card here. What card do we want to look at? What card do we need to see? All right, interesting. This, I believe, is one of the, it's an earth card. It's a diamond. And this, I think, is the King of Diamonds. Let me just make sure as I pull this out. We are looking at, yes, the King of Diamonds. And this corresponds to Capricorn. So this tarot pull is telling us Capricorn, 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 where the syzygy is this week. Where's Capricorn in your chart? What is being seeded and refreshed this week with that sextile from Jupiter and Pisces? How can you think about this Capricorn sector? And remember, we had all the pileups in Capricorn in early 2020, and then the eclipses in Capricorn in 2019 and 2020. Saturn was in Capricorn, Jupiter was in Capricorn. That was actually the sector where I think most of this upheaval took place, or much of it did. And now Jupiter and Saturn are finally separating. So, and Jupiter is sextile to Capricorn. So it's almost like the astrology is saying, and this card is pointing us with this syzygy, this new moon, let's start healing and integrating the Capricorn sector with that Pisces sextile. It's perfect, it's perfect. So look to heal that Capricorn sector. And be in the optimistic ways, like when we think about healing, we think, what can I renew? What can I do again? Like if you sprain your ankle, when it's healed, you can run again, or you can ride your bike again, or we'll go for long walks again. So there's a sense of optimism for what can be done again. And I think you can feel that energy this week. Very happy to be on this journey with you. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. That's the weekly astrology. That's the weekly tarot. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking this video or subscribing to the channel. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep these videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.